And you are about to discover why 97% of people fail miserably when they try to change their lives. It was 4:47 in the morning when David Goggins was lying on the bathroom floor, vomiting blood after yet another brutal training session. His kidneys were failing, his body was screaming for help, but something inside him whispered a disturbing truth. The pain you are feeling right now is exactly what will set you free. At that moment, weighing 300 pounds of fat and with a mind shattered by years of abuse and failure, he had no idea he was about to discover the most powerful secret about how the human brain really works. A secret that would transform a broken man into the toughest athlete on the planet. But here's the shocking part: you've already experienced this same phenomenon and didn't even realize it. You know that horrible feeling you get when you're about to do something important? When your heart races before a presentation. When your hands sweat before a tough conversation. When every fiber of your being screams stop in the middle of a workout. For decades, psychologists and neuroscientists believed this feeling was a warning sign, your brain protecting you from danger. But a revolutionary discovery changed everything. Dr. Angela Duckworth spent 15 years studying people who achieved the impossible. Olympic athletes, billionaire CEOs, artists who turned trauma into masterpieces. She wanted to understand one thing: why can some people push through discomfort while others collapse at the first obstacle? Her answer tore down everything we thought we knew about success. It wasn't IQ. It wasn't natural talent. It wasn't luck or family connections. It was something she called grit, the ability to persist in the face of suffering. But there was a problem with this discovery. No one could explain how to actually develop this mental toughness. That's when neuroscience came into play with a devastating revelation. In 2019, researchers at Stanford University hooked electrodes to the brains of volunteers and asked them to perform progressively harder tasks. What they saw on the monitors was disturbing. The brain was literally strengthening during moments of extreme discomfort. Not after. During. Each time a person pushed through pain, through fear, through the urge to quit, new neural connections formed in real time. It was like watching muscles being built, but in slow motion, inside the mind. That means for years, maybe decades, you've been misinterpreting your brain's signals. Every time you felt that tightness in your chest and backed down. Every time the voice in your head said this is too hard, and you believed it. Every time you stopped at mile 4 of the run, month 3 of the diet, week 2 of the project. You weren't being weak. You were at the exact moment where the magic happens, and you walked away. But there is a method to hack this system. A way to reprogram your mind to seek discomfort instead of fleeing from it. The ancients already knew this. In Buddhism, the lotus flower represents ultimate transformation. It doesn't bloom despite the mud, it blooms because of it. Its roots feed on decay, rot, on what seems disgusting and impossible to overcome. This metaphor carries a brutal scientific truth about how our mind works. Dr. Kelly McGonigal, a Stanford psychologist, discovered that people who see stress as beneficial, instead of harmful, live longer, are healthier, and perform exceptionally under pressure. She called it the positive stress mindset, and proved that the difference between thriving and collapsing is literally in how you interpret discomfort. But there's a devastating catch to this discovery. A mental trap that fools 97% of people and might be sabotaging you right now. Your brain has 3 survival systems that evolved over millions of years to keep you alive on the African savannas. The problem is they're completely outdated for modern challenges, and they actively work against your goals. The first is the false alarm system. Every time you face something new or challenging, your brain fires the same alarm that once saved our ancestors from lions. Racing heart, tense muscles, short breath. Your body is screaming danger, when in reality you're just trying to make an important phone call or start a workout. The second is the hijack of immediate gratification. Your reptilian brain can't process future rewards, it only understands now or never. That's why you know exercise will help you in 6 months, but your brain can only process the pain of now. And it always chooses to avoid immediate pain. The third is the most insidious, the illusion of permanent comfort. Your brain was programmed to conserve energy at all costs. It interprets any extra effort as a survival threat and creates elaborate narratives to convince you to stop. How many times have you heard these voices? You've already done enough today. Maybe tomorrow will be better. This isn't really that important. Now imagine if there were a way to reverse these primitive systems. To turn discomfort from enemy into ally. To make your brain actively seek out the challenges that will transform you. The answer is hidden in a secret laboratory where scientists discovered how to drug the brain with its own addictive substances, but in a way that builds instead of destroys. If you're enjoying discovering these secrets about how your mind works, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we're still going to reveal the exact protocol that turns any ordinary person into an unstoppable results machine. In 1998, a bizarre experiment in a University of Michigan laboratory was about to change our understanding of addiction and motivation forever. Dr. Kent Berridge injected a chemical substance into the brains of rats and observed something that challenged everything we knew about pleasure. The rats kept obsessively seeking the same activity, even when they clearly felt no pleasure at all. They were addicted to something that didn't make them happy. It was like watching someone compulsively eat bitter chocolate with a disgusted look on their face. The substance was dopamine, the neurotransmitter everyone believed was responsible for pleasure. But Berridge discovered something disturbing. Dopamine doesn't generate pleasure. It generates craving. Hunger. The devastating feeling of "I need this right now." This discovery explains why you can feel addicted to social media even though you know it harms you. Why you can binge-watch Netflix for hours without real satisfaction. Your brain is being hijacked by small doses of dopamine that promise reward but never deliver lasting fulfillment. But there is a dark side to this discovery that could be ruining your life right now. Every time you pick up your phone, eat something sweet, or avoid a difficult task, you're training your brain to chase easy dopamine. And here's the devastating problem. The more easy dopamine you consume, the less sensitive your brain becomes to genuine rewards. It's like having your taste buds burned by sugar. An apple will never taste good again after industrial candy. Dr. Anna Lemke, a Stanford psychiatrist and addiction specialist, discovered that modern people live in a permanent state of dopamine hangover. Our receptors are constantly saturated by artificial stimuli, social media, pornography, fast food, games, online shopping. The result? Activities that require real effort, exercising, studying, working on important projects, having deep conversations, become unbearably boring and difficult. It's not because you're lazy. It's because your brain's reward system is broken. Imagine trying to light a fire with wet matches after getting used to a flamethrower. That's exactly what happens when you try to do something important after spending hours scrolling endless feeds. But there's a shocking twist in this story. The same scientists who discovered how artificial dopamine enslaves us also found the key to reversing this process. And it's hidden in a neurological phenomenon that happens when you do exactly the opposite of what your brain is begging for. In 2020, Japanese researchers studied the brains of Buddhist monks during meditation. They expected to find low levels of neural activity, minds in a state of peace and stillness. What they saw was the opposite, massive bursts of activity in regions associated with pleasure and reward. But these monks weren't consuming anything. They weren't being stimulated externally. They were literally sitting in silence, facing the discomfort of their own minds. How is that possible? How can the brain generate intense pleasure through voluntary discomfort? The answer lies in an evolutionary mechanism we've had for millions of years, but that modern society has completely deactivated. When you voluntarily face difficulty, not because you're forced, but because you choose, your brain interprets it as a sign of extreme strength and safety. Think about it. Only a very powerful and confident organism would consciously choose the harder path when easy alternatives are available. Your primitive brain understands this logic and responds by flooding your system with a powerful chemical cocktail: endorphins, serotonin, natural dopamine, and something even more potent, a deep sense of pride and self-esteem that no external pleasure can replicate. This explains why David Goggins became addicted to suffering. Why ultramarathoners describe euphoric moments during 200-mile races. Why people who overcome addictions talk about a sense of power they've never experienced before. They discovered how to hack the brain's natural reward system, and became independent from the dopamine drugs that keep most people trapped in cycles of instant gratification seeking. But there is a specific protocol to activate this mechanism. A precise sequence of steps that forces your brain to reinterpret discomfort as a signal of growth instead of danger. Dr. Andrew Huberman, a Stanford neuroscientist, mapped exactly what happens in the brain during this transformation. He discovered that there is a critical window, between 11 and 20 minutes after the start of a discomforting activity, where what he calls a neurological inversion occurs. If you can push through that window, without quitting, without distractions, your brain literally rewires its associations with difficulty. What was once interpreted as threat starts being interpreted as opportunity for growth. But there's a cruel catch in this process. An internal saboteur that emerges at the exact most critical moment of transformation, whispering convincing lies that make 99% of people quit just minutes before the breakthrough. This saboteur has 3 lethal strategies that may be operating in your mind right now, keeping you trapped in behavior patterns that block any real change. The first saboteur is the internal negotiator. It shows up between minutes 3 and 7 of any difficult activity, whispering rational justifications for you to stop. You've already done enough for today. This isn't sustainable in the long run. You'll hurt yourself if you keep going. The second is even more insidious, the identity hijacker. Around minute 12, when you're in the critical transformation zone, it attacks your self-image. You're not that kind of person. Why push yourself so hard? You always quit anyway. People like you can't make drastic changes. But the third saboteur is the most lethal. Dr. Tim PsycheShadow, from Carleton University, discovered it while studying why well-intentioned people systematically sabotage their own goals. He called it the proximity to success paradox. The closer you get to real transformation, the more intense the unconscious terror of change becomes. Because real change means the death of your old version, and your primitive brain literally interprets that as a threat of extinction. That's why people quit diets when they're losing weight. Why they give up on businesses when they start to succeed. Why they sabotage relationships when they get serious. It's not self-sabotage, it's a crazy survival mechanism trying to protect you from transformation. Here's the devastating twist. This mechanism explains why traditional motivation methods fail so spectacularly. Inspirational quotes, positive visualizations, goal setting, all of it works against you because it feeds the very brain systems that will sabotage you later. When you get excited about a future change, your brain releases anticipatory dopamine. You feel good immediately, without having done the work. It's like getting the reward before earning it. The result? Your real motivation to act plummets. Dr. Gabrielle Ettingen, from NYU, proved this in dozens of studies. People who visualize future success consistently perform worse than people who visualize the obstacles they will face. Blind optimism is literally harmful to performance. So if positive thinking doesn't work, if external motivation is temporary, and if your own survival mechanisms work against you, how the hell does anyone achieve lasting change? The answer lies in a counterintuitive protocol that forces your brain to reinterpret all those threat signals as evidence you're on the right path. It's called the Lotus method because it works exactly like the flower. It uses adversity as fuel for growth. First pillar, reinterpretation of bodily signals. When your heart races before a presentation, instead of thinking I'm nervous, you think my body is preparing for peak performance. When your muscles burn during exercise, instead of this hurts, you think I'm building strength right now. It's not self-deception, it's targeted neuroplasticity. You are literally retraining the neural connections that interpret physical sensations. Dr. Alia Crum, from Stanford, proved that this reinterpretation changes objective physiological measurements. People who see stress as beneficial have lower blood pressure, more efficient heart rates, and healthier cortisol levels during challenging situations. Second pillar, principle of immediate analysis. Every time you complete a difficult task, you pause for 60 seconds and identify exactly what worked. Not the end result, the mental process that allowed you to continue when you wanted to quit. This strengthens what neuroscientists call metacognition, your ability to observe and direct your own mental processes. It's like developing an internal CEO that supervises and corrects automatic behaviors. Third pillar, fuel of greater purpose. You connect each effort to something much bigger than your personal desires. You don't train to look good, you train because you want to be an example of discipline for your children. You don't work for money, you work because you want to contribute to something that matters. Dr. Viktor Frankl discovered this by studying concentration camp survivors. People with transcendent purpose endured sufferings that destroyed others. Purpose is not motivation, it's neurological fuel that completely bypasses your self-preservation systems. Fourth pillar, social context effect. You intentionally surround yourself with people who have normalized productive discomfort. Not to compete or impress, but to reprogram your sense of what is normal. Your mirror neurons automatically imitate the behaviors of those around you. If you spend time with people who see effort as exciting rather than threatening, Your brain absorbs the perspective without conscious effort. But here's the most important part. These 4 pillars only work if you understand the exact temporal sequence of how to apply them. There is a specific critical window where each intervention is most powerful, and a precise order that maximizes neuroplasticity. Doing it in the wrong order can reinforce exactly the patterns you want to break. The sequence begins 24 hours before you face any challenge. Phase 1. Neurological preparation. You spend 5 minutes specifically visualizing the moments of discomfort you will feel and practice the reinterpretation of signals. When my heart races, it means I'm entering the growth zone. Do not visualize success. Visualize the internal resistance and how you will respond to it. Dr. Julie Norham, a Wellesley College psychologist, discovered that defensive pessimists, people who anticipate problems and prepare strategies, consistently outperform optimists in complex tasks. Your brain works better when it knows exactly what to expect from adversity. Phase 2 happens in the first 3 minutes of the difficult activity. Execution with bodily awareness. You actively monitor your physical sensations and rename them in real time. Muscle tension becomes activation. Accelerated breathing becomes optimized oxygenation. Sweat becomes cooling system working. This may sound silly, but there is solid neuroscience behind it. Dr. Matthew Lieberman from UCLA discovered that labeling emotions and sensations activates the prefrontal cortex and decreases amygdala activity, literally calming your alarm system while you maintain high performance. Phase 3 is critical. It happens between minutes 11 and 20, when the proximity to success paradox strikes with full force. Here you use the principle of micro-victory. Instead of focusing on the final goal, you break the next 60 seconds into microscopic achievements. 1 more breath. 1 more step. 1 more rep. It's not about lowering ambition. It's about hacking the brain's temporal architecture. Your nervous system can process now with precision but gets confused with later. By keeping focus in ultra-short intervals, you completely bypass the system that generates anxiety about the future. Phase 4 is where the real magic happens. Immediate post-effort analysis. In the first 90 seconds after completing the difficult task, while neurotransmitters are still circulating, you ask, what specifically allowed me to continue when I wanted to stop? This analysis in an altered chemical state creates what Dr. Rick Hansen calls directed neuroplasticity. You are literally welding new neural connections while they are still formed and malleable. But there is a final component that transforms this method from a survival tactic into a sustainable lifestyle: the discovery that productive discomfort generates an altered state of consciousness more powerful than any drug. Dr. Arne Dietrich, a cognitive neuroscientist, studied the brains of extreme athletes during peak performances. He discovered a phenomenon he called transient hypofrontality. Areas of the brain responsible for self-judgment, fear, and limiting identity literally shut down during intense effort. The result is a sensation of fusion between you and the activity. Time ceases to exist. The inner critical voice goes completely silent. You access a pure flow state where action happens without mental effort. But here's the most important discovery: this state is not exclusive to extreme athletes. Anyone can access it through any activity that pushes their personal comfort limits. A 45-year-old mother can experience transient hypofrontality running her first 5K. A student can access flow by studying for 3 hours without distractions. An entrepreneur can find transcendence by making 50 consecutive sales calls. The trigger is not the specific activity. It's the conscious decision to push through the discomfort your mind is begging you to avoid. This explains why people who incorporate voluntary discomfort into their lives report levels of happiness, energy, and self-esteem that seem impossible to outside observers. They are not masochists. They are neurological addicts to altered states of consciousness that can only be accessed through embraced difficulty. The final revelation is that the Lotus method is not about becoming a different person. It's about discovering who you really are when you strip away the layers of social conditioning that taught you to avoid discomfort at all costs. Your true version, the person that exists beneath fears, excuses, and limiting habits, is naturally drawn to challenges that promote growth. The problem is that this authentic version has been buried under years of cultural programming that equates comfort with success. Regaining access to this original version of yourself is not about discipline or willpower. It's about remembering something you've always known: growth and discomfort are inseparable, and consciously embraced discomfort is the most direct portal to becoming who you have the potential to be. Like the lotus flower, you don't need to wait for perfect conditions to bloom. The conditions are perfect now, especially if they seem imperfect. The mud is not an obstacle to growth. The mud is the growth. Every uncomfortable sensation you feel when you're about to do something important is not your brain sabotaging you. It's your nervous system preparing to lift you to a level of functioning you've never experienced before. The question is not whether you are capable of radical change. The question is whether you will finally stop interpreting the signals of growth as signals of danger. Because on the other side of the discomfort you're avoiding right now is waiting a version of yourself you can't even imagine yet. A version that sees difficulty as opportunity, that turns pressure into fuel, and that knows the hardest path is almost always the most rewarding path. If these discoveries about neuroplasticity and growth through discomfort impacted you, subscribe to the channel for more science-based content that can transform how you see your own limits.